Great to be here with you on this Wednesday. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. So much to get to here on the show. We'll chat with former Georgia, Florida State tight end Trey McKitty as he gets ready for the NFL draft coming up in a little more than 2 weeks. Get the latest with him, how his offseason is going leading up to the draft and what he thinks about the 2021 University of Georgia football team as it's coming. We'll also talk some Braves baseball with Doc Herbert, Platinum Sombrero podcast. He'll join us as the Braves danger of going 0-3 in the early season against the Miami Marlins, the 2020 playoff edition Marlins. We were talking about prior to the show, but a rough night last night. I mean, the Braves beat the Marlins last year by dropping a 29-piece. Marlins dropped a 14-piece on the Braves last night. So we'll get to that coming up in just a little bit. Actually, the final hour of the show, we'll chat with Doc Herbert there as well. We'll talk a little spring game football. We mentioned 7 SEC teams with spring games this weekend. You've got LSU and also Arkansas. We are efforting Josh Bertocchini, host of the Red Zone, there on 92.1 The Ticket in Fayetteville. Talk some Arkansas football with him as obviously they were a team not expected to do much in 2020, had a better than expected 2020, have one of the hardest schedules in the country, according to FPI, coming up in 2021, and a lot of questions still about the Hogs.
Sam Pittman did a good job with this team last year. And Ben, I know we were all impressed with Felipe Franks coming over from Florida, the job he did and kind of stabilizing that program, being a really good player. I think Felipe Franks is a guy that's going to get drafted, but how do you replace him? How do you compete in that SEC West? I like some of the playmakers. I mean, Traylon Burks out wide, Bumper Pool and Grant Morgan at linebacker, Jalen Catalon at defensive back. This is a really talented team, and I think a better team than people realize at first glance. And they're going to beat somebody in the SEC West. They absolutely are. I think the question is, and Ben, you can speak to this. You played, obviously, in the SEC. How do you find success week in and week out in a conference where there's Alabama, there's LSU, I believe they play Georgia? How do you handle that when you're still trying to build your program up?
I mean, they're going to have to go out there and protect the quarterback better. BJ, last year, I think, 34 sacks, as a team in only 10 games. Sam Pittman is known for developing offensive linemen. For them to have any shot, they're going to have to find a way to get it done.
And we have found Josh Bertocchini, host of the Red Zone on 92.1 The Ticket in Fayetteville. Josh, welcome to 3 and Out. How are you?
I'm good, guys. Good to talk with you again.
Hey, we appreciate you coming on. Spring game coming up for the Hogs Saturday. Where's this team at after 2020? Obviously, a little bit better than people thought under Sam Pittman in year number 1, but you got to play the full allotment, 12-game schedule this year. Where is this Arkansas team as they work through spring?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it right there. 12 games, a lot tougher than 12, right? So last year was finally a chance for Arkansas to get some positive momentum going for the first time in a few years. 3-7 and qualified for a bowl game. Of course, it got canceled out with TCU at the last second. But, it was a decent first year, and they had some stability at the most important position on the field with Felipe Franks at quarterback this year. Kind of raged all spring long between KJ Jefferson and Malik Hornsby, both very talented guys, but relatively inexperienced. KJ against Missouri last year and played pretty well in that game, actually. Malik Hornsby pretty much unproven at this point. So that's been interesting to follow. They're going to go for a real game, it sounds like. Sam Pittman saying we're going to try to play 4 quarters of football coming up on Saturday. So it's going to be fun to see. And so far the defense has appeared to be ahead of the offense, but, that's why they play the game. So looking forward to it, fellas.
I was going to say, is it fair to say this is going to be a team potentially led by its defense with some of the star players back on that side of the ball?
I think absolutely. I mean, Grant Morgan coming back was huge. Obviously, he had, a second-team All-SEC season last year, became a real leader for this defense. Bumper Pool back at linebacker as well. He's a guy who's regarded as a top 2 or 3 round NFL draft pick. The secondary's loaded, guys. I mean, really, when you think about a talented player like Jalen Catalon coming back alongside Joey Fusha, I think one of the better safety pairings this side of Alabama. I really believe that in the SEC. And then on the outside, I mean, Buster Brown, Craig Brooks, Simeon Blair, they've got cover guys. Last year, they struggled to get to the quarterback. They haven't really had an edge rusher since Cedric Wise and Trey Flowers back-to-back. So we'll see. Dorian Gerald, Eric Gregory, these are just names right now. But I think Arkansas looking for that that pass rush specialist who can really put it all together for Mariota in this defense.
And Josh, 34 sacks last year. I know it was an all SEC schedule, but I mean, I know this year, Sam Pittman is known for being able to develop offensive linemen. How quickly can this offensive line gel with a brutal schedule next year?
Yeah, I mean, that's really it for the offense. I want to talk quarterback with you guys, but you're getting down to the nitty-gritty. Yeah, until they have better line play, I don't think this offense is really going to do much regardless of who the quarterback is. So, they showed signs of it last year. Were they a dominant unit? No. But left to right, they had more direction. Obviously, Sam Pittman, as you allude to, one of the more offensive line, kind of whisper type guys in college football. He really has had a tendency to get things going quick. So they feel like they've had a good spring. Pittman certainly has said that. We had access to a scrimmage a couple weeks ago, and they played pretty well in that one. So averaging 315 left to right, it looks like. So they're big. And how good can they be? I don't know. Like you said, it's a difficult schedule. One of the more difficult schedules in college football, but they're going to need to be better if the Hogs are going to take another step to, who knows, 4 or 5 SEC wins.
You talked about it may not matter who the quarterback is if the line doesn't protect better. Who is the quarterback, and how I guess back and forth is that competition? Is there a guy they kind of lean towards one way or the other?
Yeah, I think it's KJ Jefferson. I really do. Like I said earlier, he had the one start against Missouri last year when Felipe Franks had a stiff knee. So he played really well in that game. I mean, had 5 touchdowns, a couple running, made a big conversion play to put Arkansas ahead late. And, of course, defense couldn't hold on. They gave up a game-winning field goal at the buzzer. But KJ played well in that game. However, that's just one game. So sustaining that over, a full season, let alone a full 5-6 weeks of spring practice is a difficult thing. Sam Pittman's been very critical of KJ. Just talking about accuracy and some of the little things. Says he's, he's communicating well. He's saying the right things, but the actual kind of second nature delivery of the football and command of the huddle isn't quite there yet. The other guy is Malik Hornsby. He's fast. He's a scrambler, highly touted coming out of high school. But again, very raw and not really, it seems like, comfortable in the pocket. You had a third guy, Lucas Coley, who's coming along slow too. So odds on KJ Jefferson's your guy. Of course, Traylon Burks and Mike Woods coming back, one of the better receiving tandems in this conference. So if somebody can get them the football in some good spots, Arkansas should be able to score some points again.
And I know for a lot of people, you think about Arkansas, you think about running the football and the great names, but as you said, playmakers out wide, a quarterback that has had a great performance in the SEC. What is Sam Pittman's vision? Ideally, what does he want this offense to do? And is there kind of a 50-50 goal run pass in mind, or do we know that yet?
I think that's a great question. When they have all the pieces in place, and I think Pittman's been very upfront, it's going to take him 2-3 recruiting classes to really get there, maybe even a full cycle of 4 classes to get it where he wants it to be. So, in terms of a balance, I think he would like it to be as close to 50-50 as possible. We saw a real focus on running the football last year, even when Franks was playing well. And even with their big play wide receivers, you saw them focus on running the ball. In fact, I mean, towards the end of the year, Traylon Burks was getting 2-3 carries a game on some end arounds and some reverse stuff. So they've gotten creative about running the ball when they've had to. Even when Rakeem Boyd was hurt last year, Traylon Smith got involved in a lot of screen game stuff for them. So I think they'll continue to be creative with ways to attack out of the backfield. And then I think, too, like we talked about, they need a commanding quarterback who can balance it out and get it closer to pass run 50-50. So the play action that Pittman and so many coaches talk about running effectively can work for them. So that's a great question. When it's all clicking, what's it going to look like? And while we don't have the full story yet, I think we have an idea of it. When this team is balanced, can run the ball and throw the ball kind of interchangeably, I think they'll finally be clicking the way Kendall Briles has talked about having this offense click.
And Josh, obviously the hardest thing for any coach to do is to have his message resonate with the team. New coaches, they got a short amount of time to be able to win over these young minds. I mean, 3-7 in the all SEC schedule. I mean, guys got to be ready to go out there and really make it happen this year with a guy Sam Pittman, for which they obviously believe in.
There's no question about it. And it's going to be an interesting year, guys, not just here at Arkansas, but obviously for all of college football and all of college athletics in general. You had such a weird year, and not that we were making excuses, but I think we all knew players and coaches were going through an unbelievably trying time that nobody had experienced before. Now that the dust is kind of settled and we're on the other side of it, I mean, I think it's a lot tougher to go from 3 wins to 5, 6, 7 wins. You know, a lot tougher to get there than to get from 0 to 2 or 3. So Arkansas got it out of reverse. Now we're kind of into neutral, starting to lean into first or second gear. But no pandemic, you know, this summer moving forward, it looks like no excuses. And I think to take that leap from 3-7 to, I don't know what you guys would say, I think 6-6 or 7-5, make a bowl game, be a great second year for Sam Pittman. So it's easy to talk about. Another thing to do it, guys. I can't. Is it football season yet? Almost. Let's go.
Finally, Georgia Southern from our area will play Arkansas in September. What should Georgia Southern fans know about Arkansas, and what's kind of the expectation on Arkansas's end about kind of what kind of program Georgia Southern's bringing out there?
Yeah, that's interesting. That'll be one of those games, you know, playing an FCS team. Arkansas is going to expect to be able to just stick a win in the back pocket. But I remember Georgia Southern going up against Auburn, going against Florida, some of those great moments they've had in recent years. And there's been a little change over there in how they do things in general. But, man, I don't know. I think Arkansas at that point in the schedule, looking at it right now, guys, I think they've had a few games under their belt. They'll hopefully be clicking for the sake of Razorback fans. And I'll just say this. If Georgia Southern comes into Fayetteville and wins that game, things are going very poorly for Arkansas in year 2. That's one of those games. You invite Georgia Southern. You hope it's competitive for 2-3 quarters. You cut them a check. But if Arkansas loses that game, it's going to be a crisis in Fayetteville, guys.
Hey, Sunbelt's had a great reputation of pulling off those upsets there out of the G5. So we shall see what happens. Josh Bertuccini, host of the Red Zone with JB on 92.1 The Ticket in Fayetteville. Our guest, Josh, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. Be well. Talk to you.
Appreciate it. Josh Bertuccini joining us here on 3 and Out. Is again, Arkansas, one of the 7 SEC schools to have their spring game coming up this weekend.
I'm just curious if I heard it right. Was there an FCS drop in reference to Georgia Southern there?
I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. We'll clip the audio, but I think we might have just committed a cardinal sin.
We'll go back and check the tape and see what happened. But, Arkansas, quickly, BJ, as he said, look, this is a team that's trying to get out of the cellar. Easier said than done in the West, where, I mean, you just look at the road you've got to travel, even with a down LSU or a Texas A&M or Auburn trying to that is tough sledding to try to go from, as he said, 3 to try to make yourself a 7-8 win ball club.
I mean, the SEC West, I mean, you could be 5th and be a top 40 team nationally. This is a good team. You have all SEC players all over the roster. Burks is all SEC wide receiver. Poole and Morgan are all SEC linebackers. Catalan is one of the best safeties in the country in all of college football. So you have foundational players, Ben. Like you said, how do you get from 3 wins to 5, 6 wins in the SEC West? That's tough, but this is a very talented team.
Well, the only way they're going to get from 3 to 7, they're going to have to keep that quarterback off the ground. 34 sacks last year. I mean, that's not going to cut it this year. I understand that it's going to be, a tough sledding, but I mean, adding teams like Georgia Southern doesn't help any team in the middle of your schedule. But I mean, nobody's going to feel sorry for an Arkansas team that definitely has the talent, BJ, as you mentioned. I mean, they got one of the best defenses in the country, definitely the SEC. But looking good on paper don't mean you're going to put one in the win column.
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out. We'll talk some LSU football coming up in about 15 minutes as well. But a tough night for the Braves and a tough morning for the Braves. They placed a couple on the injured list. We'll get to that when we come back. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you are with us here on this Wednesday. Braves probably glad it's Wednesday and not Tuesday as well, because it was rough last night against the Miami Marlins. I've come into Atlanta and taken the first two. Now you look to Charlie Morton tonight to kind of stop the bleeding. But probably the biggest takeaway, other than Max Fried going on the IL and Christian Pache going on the IL last night, was the fact that Max Fried once again was simply not great at all. And maybe this stint on the IL might be a good thing, but through his first 3 starts, BJ, it has not been the Max Fried of 2020. He has looked kind of a shell of himself out there on the mound.
Yeah, and it's probably not even fair to say he didn't look great. He looked terrible. I mean, he gave up 8 or 9 earned runs, which is a really, really bad outing. And I think his ERA is 11.75, which obviously is you could cut that in half, and that would still be a well below average ERA. And Kevin, I'm concerned. I mean, I don't know that I have concern for the totality of the entire season. I do understand that we're a couple of weeks into a 100, whatever it is, game season. What? How many games are there in a regular baseball season, Kev?
162.
I knew it was like 150, somewhere in that range. So I'm not totally concerned for the duration of the entire season. I get that there's an ebb and flow with health and confidence and performance and everything else. But to sit here and not be alarmed, I think would be a little off base. I mean, it's not like his ERA, Kev, is 5 or 6 or 7. It's 11.75, and he was hitting people last night, walking people, giving up home runs, and you're going on the IL, and maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's as simple as that. Your leg or your hamstring is messed up. But Kev, I mean, I'll go to you. How do you feel about Max Fried, who, we'll see what happens with Soroka, but I guess on paper is the Braves ace, and he's been terrible so far this season?
Well, I mean, everybody is the guy or wants to be the guy until sometimes they're the guy. And we'll see it. Last year it was kind of, hey, Max, you're kind of right there with Mike Soroka. Mike Soroka's fine. He went out injured with the Achilles. All of a sudden, Max Fried's like, hey, you just need to pick up the slack. Well, you're now the opening day starter. You're the de facto ace of the staff. That kind of carries a little different weight to it. And I'm not saying he wasn't prepared for it, but maybe just a little bit early, something wasn't right. And I'm not saying there's a hamstring. It seems kind of convenient that the hamstring was hurting after he roped a double and then came around and scored, versus there's something just not there with the pitching. And maybe this is a 10-day break to figure out whatever the heck is not right with what he has going on. So I hope it's just that. Again, maybe it really is a hamstring, but I kind of feel like it's more of a 10-day break to go collect yourself and figure out what's going on with your pitching at the plate, and hopefully you can get it figured out. I mean, the Braves are deep in pitching. So I think if this was a team from a couple years ago, yeah, this would be a tough blow, even for 10 days, to say, well, we better hope he figures it out. But the Braves have, again, Morton, Ynoa has pitched well. Soroka's coming back, and you still have guys, Bryce Wilson, who you feel pretty confident can come up and get it done. Ian Anderson's looked good here early in the season. So this is one of those things where the Braves can afford to do it at this time. But, I mean, the results through 3 just haven't been good. And I think even if you can't give a position player, I mean, you can give a position player a couple days off and see what happens. Max, it's like you won't know how it's going to go until the next start. And sometimes you just, hey, your hamstring feeling kind of tight? Good. Take 10 days and let's figure out what's going on and see if we can't just regroup and restart, so to speak, and get back out there and get back to it.
I mean, I just think that sometimes, Kevin, I think you said it best. I mean, Max Fried was incredible last year. When you look at a 60-game season, I mean, pitched really well in the postseason. Obviously, it's easy to pick up the slack when you don't have to do it. You kept saying it before the season, it's going to be different with a full season. It's not the same weight on you when I know I got it's just like a backup quarterback stepping in for a starter for 4 or 5 games looking really, really good. Well, that's what you're supposed to do. The only difference is, I mean, you are as good as your recent outing. That's how good you are. I can't go off what you've done. It goes back to how good is this Braves pitching staff? Well, they got to show consistency. Like Max Fried has shown it. Mike Soroka has shown it. But you got to continue to show it, like consistently. Like, hey, Clayton Kershaw, he's pitching tonight. Oh, man, because you know what he's going to do. It's when he doesn't do it that you start saying he just ain't have his stuff. I understand, BJ, that, you always talking about starting pitcher, and I get it. But you judge off what you do when you do it, not what you've done up to this point. Because up to this point, it has been bad. But there was a lot of bad. Ozzie, got a home run, and Marcell. But the one thing I went back to Max Fried was you load the bases. You hit two guys, load the bases. Adam Duvall, he's out there looking, my goodness. Adam Duvall was good when he played for the Braves. He didn't look like this. Well, he did look really good against the Marlins. That's how he ended up with the Marlins. And, Snit after the game saying, I wish it would have been somebody else, not Adam Duvall. No, Snit. We don't want nobody looking like that yesterday. But I just think that this Braves team, they just got to find their rhythm. That's the difference in coming into a season, never having won a playoff series, trying to get back to the playoffs compared to we were 4 hours away of going to the World Series. They hear that stuff. But unfortunately, that team out there in LA is still playing well, and they still got Clayton Kershaw, while the Braves, you down 2 games to the Marlins right now.
Yeah, and again, we'll see. I think it makes tonight a big one for the Braves at home to try to bounce back and get in the win column. If you split the series, I think you take that at this stage. People forget that the Marlins were in the playoffs last year and won a series last year. But, man, BJ, I know he was a kind of a fan favorite when he was with Atlanta. But, man, Adam Duvall is wearing the Braves behind out there in this series, and is a guy that a lot of people said, look, I know you're trying to go back with Marcell Ozuna, but why not bring this guy back as your 4th option in the outfield potentially for instead of Ender Inciarte? I know you had a contract, try to trade Ender and bring Adam Duvall back. Fan favorite, a guy who produces, goes out there and can play the corner outfield spot, and it didn't work out. And he goes to Florida, goes to Miami rather, and is having a great start to the season. And again, 4 for 5, 2 homers, 7 RBI. That is a night for him, wearing you out in a little bit of payback. I think that kind of hurts when it was a guy you probably could have had back on the roster there in Atlanta, but just, I guess, chose not to.
He's been unstoppable in this series. I do agree with Ben. I don't quite understand the comments from Snit. It's like you don't want anybody doing that. Adam Duvall, 7 RBI. That's a couple of series worth of RBI right there for a good batter. Yeah, so I would avoid him. But I just keep going back to Fried, Kevin. I understand we're going to see him maybe in a couple of weeks after some time off. But what's alarming to me is the why, right? Because to go back to it, and I trust your judgment on statistical stuff with baseball, especially a couple of weeks into it. But again, it's not like his ERA is 7. It's not like his ERA is 5, right? Like people are very concerned about Will Smith, and Will Smith's ERA is 5, right? And Max Fried's ERA is twice that. And for a reliever, sometimes their ERAs are higher because they pitch fewer innings. Like Max Fried's ERA is very, very, very concerning. It is twice what a below average ERA would be considered. And I guess I'm asking you, Kevin, do you think it's just confidence? Do you think the hamstring has something to do with kind of his mechanics? Is it just, like you said before, maybe if you have 3 bad outings in the middle of the summer, it doesn't impact your ERA if you've had, a spring and a start to summer that's been pretty good. But I just look at that box score last night, man, and it was really, really bad. Like not kind of bad, not average. And of course I trust this is a guy that's very talented, who's proven it, who obviously is a foundational piece for the Braves. But right now, what do you attribute this to?
Again, something just not right. And maybe that's why you put him on the injured list. I know the hamstring is the reason, but you give him some time to figure out. Maybe it's just something mechanically is not happening, doesn't have the same snap on the curveball or life in the fastball, not hitting spots. Could be a number of things with Max Fried, and just give him 10 days to think about it. And again, this is why I think sometimes in BJ, if you just go off straight numbers and you say, well, look at his ERA. Well, given the start he's gotten off to, it's going to be a while before his ERA looks anything close to acceptable. It just is. He could go out and pitch 3 shutouts in a row, and his ERA is still probably going to be up there around 7. So, it's going to be a while before that thing looks anywhere close to respectable. And so I think sometimes you fall in the trap of just looking at the numbers. Like, oh, he's been bad. Well, he started off bad, and that's going to affect pretty much the way it looks for him the rest of the season. But I think this is one of those, you see it from time to time, where it's just something is off, and everybody knows what it is. Everybody knows something is off, and we don't know what it is. And it's, the old, hey, man, hamstring's feeling a little tight, isn't it? No, I'm good. No, it looked like you were hobbling around out there. Yes, I think your hamstring's a little tight. Why don't we take 10 days and figure it out? Oh, okay, yeah. When you talk to reporters after the game, rounding, I mean, because he burned out that double and didn't show any signs of, oh man, rubbing the leg or anything. Came around and scored. It was fine. Then he had the hamstring a little tight. It had nothing to do with the fact you were getting beat 11-3. But I mean, yeah, the hamstring's a little tight. We'll take. I think this is just a much needed break for Max Fried early to figure out what the heck is going on. We saw it with, I mean, think about it. We've seen it with Mike Fulton-Avich. We've seen it with other guys who have, an injury pop up and 10 days later they're magically healed. And I think it's just more to find what in the world is going on that is not right from what we saw even in spring up until this point. So I'm not overwhelmingly concerned about it, but it's not just what you want to see from your so-called ace coming out of the gate that, your first 3 starts have been certainly nothing to write home about at all. So I give him some time to come out there. Christian Pache missing, going to be interesting to see. But again, he hasn't really been hitting. So do you really lose anything with Ender Inciarte out there every day? I think that's a wash at this point, given the way they can both play defense. And certainly if Ender doesn't hit, well, you weren't getting anything from Christian Pache either at this point offensively. We've got more to come here on 3 and Out. We'll talk more Braves later in the show with Doc Herbert, Platinum Sombrero podcast. He'll join us coming up in the final hour of the program. But again, back to the college football here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. LSU, they're looking to bounce back in 2021. They've got their spring game this weekend as well. We'll hit that next. 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here on 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Glad you are with us. If you missed any portion of the show, ESPNCoastal.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. You can catch podcast versions of the show daily there as well. ESPN Coastal is our YouTube channel. You can check that out each and every day. Spring games coming up this weekend. We mentioned 7 of them in the SEC alone this weekend. LSU, 1 p.m. on SEC Network. Be able to check them out. Certainly quarterback battles abound across the SEC. This is one where people think 2020 an anomaly for LSU, BJ. Heading into 2021, that blip will be reversed going the other way, but they have one of the more interesting QB battles, I think, in all of the SEC with Miles Brennan and Max Johnson.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how similar they were last year. Ben, Miles Brennan last year, 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Max Johnson, 8 touchdowns, 1 interception. Brennan, 60% completions. Max Johnson, 59% completions. Max Johnson, his signature moment was, of course, winning in the swamp. But I wonder what we see on Saturday. How big of an impact will that have on the depth chart entering the fall? And just overall, I do agree. LSU, the Mississippi State loss was shocking, but you look at this team, they had stretches where they played really well. They're still very, very talented, have recruited very well. You have, holdovers on the coaching staff, obviously, and on the roster from a national championship team. I'm not saying that right now I'm picking them over Alabama by any stretch, but when you look at LSU's talent, right, and you compare them to the other top teams in the country, they're right there. Derek Stingley's still on this team. He could be the number 1 pick in the draft next year. So, Ben, I have questions. What's the quarterback situation going to look like? How do you manage that? I've heard you say before, maybe if you have 2 quarterbacks, that could be a problem. I know at Florida they've managed 2 quarterback systems before. Will somebody be able to be a backup? Will somebody be able to be a starter? Or will there be kind of a rotation? Will there be a competition that goes through the entire fall? I don't know. I do know this. The secondary was last in the country in yards per game last year. They're way better than that. I think you'll see improvement there. But this is a team that can theoretically play with anybody on their schedule, including Alabama, whoever. They can play with them. So I think this is going to be a very competitive, very fascinating spring game on Saturday with a very good team.
I would think so. And I think the best thing about the whole Miles Brennan and Max Johnson is I don't like when one player is just miles and miles better than the guy, than the guy in front of him. I think what happens is both guys bring unique skill set. They're going to get the best of both offenses because they got full nuance of the offense. As a skilled player back in the day, you want to be able to give your best to both quarterbacks because you don't know. Going into the spring, you already know who the starter is, and you're going to be a starter. You're only out there with that guy. Whereas it doesn't matter who's getting the plays. If it's Miles, it's Max. And I like the fact that Max Johnson went into the swamp. He didn't, and it showed that it didn't matter to him about the record. Most players are front runners. If the team is good, they play good. Well, he showed that it don't matter what's going on with the team. I don't care that Florida has, college football playoff aspirations. I'm gonna go into the swamp at night, game of the week, and beat them. I think that says a lot. I mean, BJ, I think it's gonna be square upon these coordinators. I mean, Jake Peets. I mean, you talking about 7 years in the NFL. You're talking about Durante Jones and those DBs in Minnesota. That's who everybody going to be watching. Why? It's a copycat league. When they had their best offense in LSU history, they had a coordinator come from the NFL. When you look at Derek Stingley Jr., if the best player on my team is the cornerback, give me the best coach to help him. If you've seen Minnesota DBs play, Harrison Smith and those guys flat out go out there and get it done. So I just think that I'd rather it be on the coordinators because Coach O is a facilitator. He's not going to, be talking to one side of the ball more than the other. He's going to let those coordinators go out there and work. But BJ, 5-5 is 5-5. I don't care who opted in, who opted out. You went 5-5. You LSU. You don't want to have those ebbs and flows. I mean, that 2019 team, wow. I mean, I know what Alabama just did, but it's going to be hard to say any team is better than that. Derek Stingley Jr. was a true freshman on that team, and because of, NCAA restrictions, he had to be, in college 2 more years. I think they play with a lot of pride in LSU. I think they play with a lot of pride in the state of Louisiana. Those guys are going to be coming out ready to go. But put it on those coordinators, having a real battle at the quarterback position, which I don't think will be settled in the spring game because, you ain't finna be teeing off on them. I mean, you ain't going to be just taking them to the ground. They're not getting the hit. Give them a chance to go out there and throw the football. But those skill positions at LSU, I mean, is it Boutte, BJ? I want to make sure I'm saying
I
this name.
believe it's Keyshawn Boutte, and you talk about players that have momentum heading into the season. His last game against Ole Miss last year, he had 14 catches for 308 yards and 3 touchdowns. So I think when we talk about LSU's talent, we're underappreciating how much is there. We're underappreciating how comparable they might be potentially to an Alabama just off of the talent and ability. Ben, this team could be really, really good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they got the big Clemson transfer. You know, Mike Jones Jr. Don't know if that's Mike Jones Sr.'s son, from Houston. But I just think that, BJ, the one thing I know about LSU is they take pride in in their style of football. Coach O, his quote, you know, outside of Go Tigers, whenever he wakes up in the morning and can't, quote, beat somebody's he going to do something else. 5-5 is not who they are. That's what they've shown last year. They're trying to get back to the top, of that vaunted SEC West, which is not going to be easy with Alabama not going into West Texas A&M, getting better. Who knows what's going on at Auburn? I think you're gonna learn a lot about this team. LSU was always going to have playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. You know, they go from no names to big names really, really quickly if they go out there and execute. But I'm looking forward to seeing what this defense is going to do. They've added some players in the transfer portal. Derek Stingley didn't put his best tape or best foot forward last year. I think they're going to be playing some motivated football, and that does make for a good spring game. I can't stand spring games. It is the last thing we have to do in spring. It's a necessary evil, but for me, it's unnecessary because let's get this thing over with so we can get up out of here.
And BJ, again, you look at I guess within the context of an SEC schedule, right? I mean, you played all SEC teams last year. If you take 2 off and add 4 winnable games to the schedule, right? That's your 9-win team, right? Is that how that works? Or you add 2 more? How far? Because people look back and say, "Oh, this LSU team, you had guys opting out. They come out and Mississippi State embarrasses them right out of the gate." With Mike Leach and that offense, and people are going, "Whoa, what happened to a team that just broke the mold for record books last year?" But you look and say, "Hey, played an all SEC schedule. We're a 500 team." This year, you get the 4 non-conference games. If you just assume that out of those non-conference games, there's probably some Northwestern State and stuff like that up in there. I mean, is this an 8-9 win team? Probably in reality last year, all things being the same, and maybe it's a little bit of a step backward from a team that lost so much to the NFL, and maybe not as drastic as people kind of think on paper happened in 2020.
Tough to say. And you look at their schedule last year, they got blown out a couple of times. I mean, they absolutely got blown out. They also lost to Missouri on the 1-yard line where they couldn't score 4 times from right outside the goal line at the end of the game. You also had, some very significant injuries. They open up, I believe, at UCLA. So that's a no-joke opener. But Ben, I ask you this, and Kevin, because we've seen it. Sometimes it works in college football. Sometimes it's a major issue. How do you make sure your quarterback race is a quarterback competition and not a quarterback controversy?
You give both quarterbacks the number one offense. You give them the same plays just at different times. You don't give one player more of an advantage than the next. The thing about it is when you own an offense and you understand that it's a quarterback competition, it's your job as a position player, whether you're an offensive lineman, tight end, running backs, receivers, go out there and get open for these guys. Because the last thing you want to do is get open for Miles Brennan and Max Johnson becomes the guy. You want it, as they say, when the ball's in the air, it should look different. It should look different as far as like me getting open. It shouldn't matter if Max is throwing at Miles, but that makes the spring better. I mean, that's the purpose of the spring. The purpose of the spring is to see how much I've grown as a player from the previous year. I know people talk about the opt-outs. Well, a lot of these guys would not have played if all these guys had knocked out. So you're getting a lot of guys that got some experience last year that probably was going to be buried on the depth chart.
Your senior year at Florida. Your senior year at Florida. Did y'all know in the spring what the depth chart was going to look like in the fall, or it was fluid, right?
No, we really didn't know, because what happens is Ingle Martin ended up being the starter, but Chris Leak was the 5-star coming from Charlotte, North Carolina. I think what happens is sometimes you get too caught up in what's going on. If it ain't got, I always say this. I'm a tight end. I control what tight ends do. Leave that other stuff alone. I mean, when I start getting caught up in, is it going to be Chris or is it going to be Ingle? You know what Ron Zook would have told me? Get the hell up out of here. I mean, just go out there and do what you do, which is, to me, knowing what I'm supposed to do. Now, I played differently with Ingle than I did Chris, because Ingle was a vet and I knew he knew what was going on. I protected Chris. He's 18 years old in the SEC. So if he looks bad, it's because I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, which made me a better player. I know he ended up, you want to develop a rapport, man. If I'm 18 years old and my tight end is 21 years old, I hope the 21-year-old fourth year guy is going to protect me, a true freshman, bright eyes. I mean, so I just think that sometimes, BJ, we get too caught up in things that don't got nothing to do with us. Miles Brennan and Mac Johnson control what you can control. If you are a skill position guy, go out there and get open. If you're an offensive lineman, keep those guys clean in the pocket. You're going to definitely do that in the spring game, because that way the coaches know when you are favoring one guy or quote brother-in-law and not really giving your best effort. You're not good enough to do that, because like I said, I think this LSU team, people sleeping on them because of what happened last year. I think that is not going to be good for those opponents not named Alabama this season.
Let's quick look at Alabama. Their spring game coming up this weekend, or LSU rather, their spring game coming up this weekend. One of 7 SEC teams to have their spring game coming up on Saturday. We've got more to come, including Trey McKitty, former Georgia Florida State tight end, going to join us as he prepares for the draft top of next hour. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, BJ Bennett. Glad you're with us all across the show here on this Wednesday. And Ben, I know we were talking about a great anniversary for BJ. The dictionary first published on this day in 1828. Big words, BJ Bennett. Exasperationally, couldn't be any more excited about that. And on cue, he disappears because we that's how it's going today. So, but the anniversary of the dictionary, 1828, a while back. I can't do math. I refuse to do math here on the show. And BJ's back with us. There we go.
I just got a message saying my internet is
on cue. On cue. I got a message saying my
struggling to connect, but the dictionary.
You're
going in and out.
Yes, one of those things that happens occasionally here on the show. But I thought maybe only the second best anniversary for BJ would be the invention of the thesaurus, and there we go.
Of course. I mean, he's acting very ostentatious right now. I mean, it's just. I mean, hey, Kevin. Kevin, you've known BJ longer than me. Was he like that when he was much younger? Using those big words, you look at him like, "Get out of my house." I don't want to hear that nonsense today. Not today.
But we've got plenty to get to coming up. Next hour, we'll hear from Trey McKitty, former Georgia Florida State tight end. He will join us as he's preparing for the draft. And we look forward to talking with him coming up in just a little bit. Also, Jalen Camp is set to join us tomorrow on the show. He also getting ready for the draft. Did 30 reps of 225 at a private workout there, which would be a record for wide receivers if he actually did that at the combine, or the record is 27. So I look to talk to him tomorrow on the program here on 3 and Out. But when we come back, Trey McKitty will join us, one of Ben's best favorite position groups, tight end. Always excited to talk about that on the show. He'll join us when we return. We'll get to take 3 and more next hour. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Hit us up on Twitter. Love to hear from you at Pigskin Radio, at Pigskin Radio. We're streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com. Also live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Trey McKitty, Georgia Bulldog tight end, next here on 3 and Out on this Wednesday afternoon. Good to have you along here on 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, thanks for being with us. Plenty to get to on the show. We'll look to Take 3 coming up in just a little bit. Also, what's the future of college football branding with name, image, likeness out there on the table? We'll get to that coming up in just a little bit as well. But joining us here on the program, former Georgia, Florida State tight end, getting ready for the NFL draft, which starts 2 weeks from tomorrow. Trey McKitty joins us here on 3 and Out. Trey, welcome to the show. How are you?
Yeah, how you doing?
Hey, we're doing fantastic. And coming out of 2020 into 2021, what has that been? That experience been like going through the COVID, the 2020 season, then obviously still preparing for the draft, trying to get your workouts in, going through obviously all the protocols you have to get that in.
Yeah, it was definitely a different year for us all. Unlike anything I've ever experienced, especially during the football season. But we fought through it. Did what we can, and turned out to be a good season. And really just, training with the off season, things have been going pretty well. Just trying to stay healthy as much as I can and, doing the right things, working out and getting ready.
Trey, you had an incredible Senior Bowl, a lot of positive reviews on your game. What was that experience like for you?
It was fun. I got to be out there with a lot of great players, mingle with some great guys and be able to play against them. And just be able to showcase my talent in front of, a lot of NFL scouts and personnel. So, it was a good time, great week.
And Trey, how did coming from a school like Florida State prepare you to be able to play at a school like Georgia?
Sorry, say that one more time?
I said, how did coming from a school like Florida State prepare you to be able to play at a school like Georgia?
I think it prepared me well. I think, the way Georgia kind of ran their system was a lot similar to how Coach Fisher did my freshman year at Florida State. So I think, it wasn't too much of a huge change. They say the SEC is a lot better, the best conference, and it is, but not too crazy of a difference. So it was a smooth transition.
Trey McKitty joining us here on 3 and Out. And how would you describe your game as a tight end? I know we have guys who are better blocking tight ends, guys who are more pass catchers. Are you a mesh in between? How would you kind of describe yourself as a tight end?
I think I'm definitely a mesh. I think I'm an all-around tight end, 3-down guy that's able to do both things, very well. So that's me.
A lot of talk about your athleticism and how you can present matchup problems for defenses. Talk about how you best use your athleticism and how you think that'll help you transition to the next level.
Really just the ability to get open, against anybody, putting outside against a corner or in the slot against a safety or a linebacker, be able to maneuver around those guys and get myself open. I think how I use my athleticism the best.
And Trey, you mentioned you're a mesh of both a blocking tight end and a receiving tight end. I know you say still going through workouts, staying healthy. What do you work on, day in, day out, as far as like with the draft rapidly approaching?
Really just my overall strength, mobility, making sure I got good flexibility and all those things. And, of course, the field work, got to make sure that my hands, my steps are all going well for the blocking game, working outside of that and running routes, make sure to stay sharp with those things. So really just continue to work all facets of my game, up until the draft.
Trey McKitty joining us here on 3 and Out. And Trey, obviously a wonderful week for you at the Senior Bowl. Describe that week for us and how you think that improved and helped your draft situation.
I think it helped me a lot. I didn't really get the production that I wanted to this past year at Georgia. So, being able to go and showcase myself at the Senior Bowl, I think helped me a lot. Got to show scouts what I'm capable of as far as, in the passing game. Also did some good things in the blocking game as well. So just overall, I think I helped myself a lot. And really thankful for the opportunity.
So what's it like to be a couple of weeks out from this? I mean, you're a guy that has a lot of upside, a lot of talent. A lot of people are talking about you. What's it like being this close to the NFL draft and having a pro future to look forward to?
It's crazy. I've been looking towards this process my entire life, and to finally be here, it's still surreal. I don't think it's quite hit me yet. This whole process, through college and the combine training, it's gone really fast. And now that we're 2 weeks out from the draft, it feels like everything's moving slow motion. So I just can't wait to get to that day and see what happens.
And Trey, most of the time, you go to college for 4 to 5 years, sometimes 6 years. You started off at Florida State, ended up at Georgia, go to the Senior Bowl. I mean, how fast did it really go by? I remember my time in college, it went really, really fast. Did it seem like you just walking on campus at Tallahassee, now it's all over, about to come to an end here in 2 weeks in Athens?
Yeah, it went crazy fast. You know, I feel like it was just a couple weeks ago. I was, still in high school. So, definitely that whole time, those 3 years at Florida State flew by, and definitely this past year at Georgia. And like I said, this whole process really is flying. And, right now it's slowing down, but, it's whatever. We having fun. Things fly. Things seem to fly like that. So.
Trey McKitty joining us here on 3 and Out. Who are some of the teams that have reached out to you or your agent and talked to you here pre-draft?
Really, it's been looking good, this whole process. I've talked to quite a bit of teams, probably over 20 teams I've had, different Zoom calls with. So, it's been good. It's been a blessing. Hopefully one of those guys fall in love with me, pick me up on when it's time to go.
I know it's interesting for prospects because you hear other people talking about you all the time. I'll ask you, what is an NFL team getting in Trey McKitty at the next level?
Like I said before, they're getting an all-around guy, as far as on the field, can do both in the passing game and the running game, and off the field, great character guy, can keep his nose clean and, be accountable for the team.
And Trey, how fortunate are you guys coming into the league to where the tight end position is seen as more of a weapon? It used to be like an extension of the offensive line. They coming in, offensive coordinator already got plays drawn up for you guys, as you mentioned, to be able to get up open against corners, safeties, linebackers. You guys are really an extension. Sometimes they run the passing game through you guys.
Right, correct. That's the way that the league's moving towards, and I have no problem with it at all. Definitely a good thing for the tight end.
Trey McKitty, former Georgia tight end, joining us here on the 3 and Out. Trey, really appreciate the time. I know it's getting close to NFL draft time, and we appreciate you sharing a few moments with us. Best of luck to you moving forward. Thanks so much.
Yes, sir. Appreciate y'all. Thank you for having me on.
Appreciate it. Trey McKitty, Georgia tight end, getting ready for the NFL draft. And as he said, look, didn't have the production he wanted there at Georgia, BJ, but Senior Bowl week was really good to him. Really showed out. Had a lot of folks interested in him, and looks like a guy that will hear his name called at some point there during the NFL draft coming up.
Yeah, productive at Florida State, part of, good team at Georgia, contributor at Georgia, an impact player at Georgia, had the touchdown against South Carolina. Ben, I'm seeing a guy that's 6'4", 250, can catch passes, can block, had a great Senior Bowl, has played at 2 big-time programs. I mean, what's this guy going to bring to a team at the next level?
I mean, he already sounds like a seasoned pro. I think what happens is sometimes we get caught up in the measurables, right? If I'm a GM or a head coach, I'm looking at what he went through. Started out at one school, all right, didn't work out, went through the transfer portal. It worked out for him at Georgia. As he said, I didn't have the productive season I wanted on my team. Then I go to the Senior Bowl against, getting coached by NFL teams, and it worked out for him. I had to do all this through a COVID-stricken season, and I never heard any off-the-field things. You asked him, BJ, what type of player they get. He said a good character player away from football. That's what you really want. He got the measure. It goes back to what my former teammate Ben Hartsock said. When you 6'4", 250, you got to prove you cannot play football. See, Trey McKitty, he's did it at 2 schools under 2 different systems in 2 different conferences and had success in both. I think he's going to be great to the next level. Like he said, now the tight end position is celebrated. They're looking for that mismatch. They're looking for that guy that's got that big catch radius. I think Trey McKitty is going to make a team very, very happy. I know everybody's talking about Kyle Pitts and the big tight end for Penn State. Trey McKitty, he could end up being better than all of them because it depends on the system. It depends on the opportunities. He did it at 2 big-time schools. Now he's trying to hear his name called in a couple of weeks.
What's the biggest? And I mean, Ben, you've talked about it before, but for a tight end going from the SEC to the NFL, what's the biggest challenge?
Just understanding that, the competition is great everywhere. A lot of times, you are in the best conference. I get that part. But anybody on that field, they out there for a reason. They're the best player. This is where the best players in the world play right now. And I think with a guy like Trey McKitty he's dealt with adversity. He's dealt with it. I know Kevin be talking about the COVID-stricken season. That says a lot by a young guy, 21, 22 years old, that I can't leave campus. I only can do football. I mean, that says a lot to me. So I think that when these guys get into the system, let's face it, nobody saw George Kittle becoming what he became. Nobody saw Travis Kelce become what he became. put them in those systems, they the number one, number two tight ends in the league, with George Kittle probably being the number one all around, with Darren Waller probably being the best receiving tight end, not named, Travis Kelce. I just think that BJ, now you can become a household name in a year or a game. I mean, obviously, man, I didn't root for him one Saturday in October, but I'm rooting for every last player, and definitely these tight ends when it comes to getting drafted. It's a dream come true, because a lot of guys, man, they don't know they play their last down of football. I don't think Trey McKinney can worry about that. He shined on the biggest stage, that being the Senior Bowl.
Appreciate Trey McKinney joining us here on 3 and Out. We've got so much more to come here in hour number 2. We'll take 3 right around the corner, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here on this Wednesday. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop, glad you are with us. Again, appreciate Trey McKitty joining us last segment as he gets ready for the NFL draft, which is 2 weeks from tomorrow. So right around the corner. Obviously, a lot of smoke coming with pre-NFL draft talk. We'll get to that coming up later in the show as well. But first, we'll take three here on this Wednesday 3 and Out. All right, given now that Max Fried is on the IL and has not pitched particularly well, is there currently a Braves pitcher that you have complete faith in?
Wow, I'll be interested to hear your answer on that. I mean, not many. Maybe Charlie Morton, and we'll see what he does tonight. Maybe Chris Martin. I know Chris Martin's been hurt a little bit. Maybe Huascar Ynoa. I mean, he's been really, really good. I think when you think about Morton, you think about a guy that's 37, that's been around the game, that has made the All-Star game a couple of times, a veteran. Again, you need a big start from him tonight, but not a lot of guys that I have a ton of faith in right now. But if I had to say one, I guess I would say Charlie Morton right now, just because of his veteran presence.
Complete faith in a Braves pitcher right now? Has Bryce Wilson pitched yet? I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, he's been through everything. I mean, I just think I don't have a lot of faith in the Braves pitchers right now, because I'm not going to say any names, nobody right now, because nobody's been as consistent as I wanted to be. Plus, if it's not Max Fried, right? If it's not your ace, you picking anybody but the guy who's supposed to be your ace. That's a bad sign. So for me, I'm gonna say no one right now. They got to prove it. Goes back to what Kevin said before the season. I am looking for consistency. As my coach would say, you know what you consistent at? What? Being inconsistent. That is what the Braves pitchers are consistent at right now. So nope, no faith in any of them. I still rock with them, but that don't mean I got faith in them. So that would go 0.
I mean, I would say probably the guy going tonight, Charlie Morton or Ian Anderson, has been okay. I don't know if Ian Anderson's pitched well enough to be like, hey, that's the guy that can carry you, but he's pitched all right. But Charlie Morton, for me, probably would be the best answer I could give you as the guy I have the most faith in for the Braves right now. Take two. Now that we've gotten into spring and we're kind of working towards late spring with a lot of teams finishing up spring practice here, is Gus Malzahn looking like the best hire of this past kind of hiring cycle?
Well, Malzahn shouldn't have been fired, and I think it's a really good hire for UCF. You talk about having a national name, and UCF's going to be very good again this year. I mean, they could be ranked higher than Auburn, for a good portion of this season. He's up there. Ben, you were talking about this in the show meeting. Deion, kind of a game changer, a trendsetter in some regards. I think the attention and spotlight that comes with him has been really meaningful. I think Sark at Texas, is a guy that might be poised to have some success moving forward. But yeah, Malzahn was a really good hire. Questions around the Harsin hire, we'll see. But I think Deion is probably the guy.
Yeah, I think it's Deion as well. I think when you start thinking about the HBCU circuit and the SWAC and the MEAC, you're talking about some really, really good teams, really, really good programs, and he's trying to boost the reputation of those programs. I know he's trying to get more televised games, which is going to be harder to do when the fall comes. You look at Eddie George, Ohio State great, Tennessee Titan great, becoming the next head coach of Tennessee State. I know this is just a myth. You're being thrown out there, Kevin. I heard that somebody said could Allen Iverson or Michael Vick be in Norfolk, state head coach. Who knows, man? Guys might want to get in the coaching profession. I don't think Deion had any collegiate coaching profession. I don't think Eddie George had no coaching experience when you start talking about these guys. So I just look at what guys mean to the culture of football, not just, the team itself. I think Deion, for what he's doing, not just for Jackson State, but for HBCUs as a whole.
I think Gus Malzahn quietly was pretty, maybe the best one. I mean, it's a guy that's coached at a high level in the SEC going to Central Florida when, he could have had some other suitors out there pick him up. I think for a school that's obviously trying to raise their profile, UCF, that's not bad. It's a pretty solid A+ hire, maybe the best one there, certainly in Division I. Take three. Is there a can't miss prospect in this year's NFL draft?
Probably not. Ben, we were that phrase can't miss means you're, guaranteed to be a star for 10, 15 years. I think people throw that around. I think people say that, but generationally, right? If you look back during our lifetime, I'm thinking about maybe Orlando Pace. I'm thinking about Jonathan Ogden, maybe Peyton Manning, maybe if you want to go way back, maybe John Elway. I can't miss. And I know some might say, hey, Trevor Lawrence, he was going to be the number one pick as soon as he, won at Clemson. Yeah, but the quarterback, I mean, it is tough as a quarterback to come in.
I put Von Miller in there too. Cody and I were talking about that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good one. Yeah, I think the guys are few and far between, though. I mean, for me, I think about those offensive tackles immediately. I mean, Ben, I don't know if you play with guys who were kind of described as that. Maybe Sewell, maybe Lawrence, but can't miss. I would be very, very hesitant with that.
Penei Sewell going to be the closest one. I mean, can't miss in this draft with everything is predicated on these high-powered offenses. When you're a defensive guy, are you going to be the key of the defense? Are you going to be a key piece? I mean, I know that Christian just mentioned Von Miller, a guy to me that was a can't-miss prospect, even though he wasn't a top 5 pick. Was speaking DeMarcus Ware. DeMarcus Ware was about as good as a football player as you ever going to see at the outside linebacker position coming out of Troy. And DeMarcus Ware also helped Von Miller really develop his game. When they won the Super Bowl, he was on one side, Von Miller was on the other side. Offensive tackles always got the best shot to be it because those guys come in, you plug them there for the next 10 years, forget they was ever there because they don't give up any sacks. So I would go Penei Sewell. While it's a lot of big-time talent in this draft, if Trevor Lawrence don't go, Trevor Lawrence had to go to back-to-back Super Bowls. He had to be a regular season MVP, and he got to become the face of the league to not be considered a bust, right? That's going to be very – I mean, Peyton Manning was a can't miss. In 14 years, he went to 2 Super Bowls and lost one of them in 14 years. So I just think that can't miss is always something I stray away from because it's easy to talk about what a player becomes. Can't miss. You got to wait, 5-6 years down the road to be talking about that.
I mean, I think if you want to talk about a can't miss, as long as he doesn't wind up on the Jets or something, which I think is obviously not going to happen. But I mean, I think Kyle Pitts pretty close. I mean, he's a guy that at that position is going to be a mismatch, even for NFL guys. I mean, you talk about going into the next level and say, well, everybody's elite when you get to the NFL, but he will be a mismatch even for NFL guys, just because at that position there's not guys that tall, that fast on the whole that a matchup makes sense. Okay, we'll put a small, fast guy on him. Well, we'll just throw it up, let him catch it. All right, we'll put a bigger linebacker on him. All right, he can run past him. So I think as far as can't miss in this draft, I would say Kyle Pitts will be one. I think
that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Maybe be the other one, but I would say there's not a lot and few and far between. What you got?
I was going to ask Ben, because I was listening to Michael Lombardi. He was filling in for Greeny today, Ben, and he said we have to stop categorizing Kyle Pitts as a tight end, right? He wasn't saying he was a wide receiver, but there's fans who are like, oh, look at our history drafting tight ends. Look at the tight ends we've had come through our team. And he said we have to stop categorizing him as a tight end. I think Kevin's right. He's not a tight end. He's a pass catcher. He's a threat. He's a weapon. He's a mismatch. I think outside of Penei Sewell, and if you want to talk about can't miss, I think he's about as close as you can get. You get 6-7 years of elite play out of Kyle Pitts, I think absolutely you nailed that pick.
I mean, Kyle Pitts got a shot, but I will say this. With all due respect to Kyle Pitts, nobody's big enough to redefine the position. I mean, as great as Kyle Pitts is going to be, the thing about football is he's just the latest version of it. I mean, people don't talk about Darren Waller enough. Darren Waller got back-to-back 100-catch season. I got it, so I think what happens is he is a threat. I get that part. Kyle Pitts is benefiting from the guys that's already there. I always say this. It's very, very hard to be the first. It's easy to be the second. So I just think that while I love all the fanfare that Kyle Pitts is getting, I go back to the Georgia game. I didn't like the hit against him, but if he thinking that DBs and safeties ain't finna lay the wood to him, they don't want nothing to do with him. He got to survive 16 games or 17 games now to even be talking about it. So the thing about it is I think Kyle Pitts got a chance to be a household name. Just he's getting fanfare like a quarterback does. But the only problem is, I mean, you know what it comes down to, Christian? If you ain't first team all pros, that means you had a good season. That means if you're not the best player at your position, you're just another player at your position. I don't think he's going to be – I think he's already a top 10 tight end, but we ain't going to start reshaping positions. Rename positions. At the end of the day, Tony Gonzalez was number 2 all-time in catches. He ain't won a lot of Super Bowls, but playing the tight end position, the Godfather, Tony G, man, I'm just saying, I seen this dude do it with 2 teams. He was the ran the passing game through him with Atlanta and with Kansas City. People compare Travis Kelce to who? Tony G. People comparing Kyle Pitts to who? Darren Waller. So you always going to get compared to somebody, but if he can go out there and do what he did at Florida consistently, oh my God, this dude gonna, dare I say, man, have that Lamar Jackson type vibe to him. Have a bunch of kids, eat a little bit more, eat a couple of more potatoes, to go for two.
Oh, so you're saying there's going to be some kids, the coach is like, hey, you're 6'4", 230 pounds, you got to play defensive end. He's like, no, sir, I'm a tight end.
Listen, at the end of the day, it's all. I don't like comparisons because most of the time you don't compare to what they're comparing you to. If I hear a kid say, "Mama, I'm gonna be the next Kyle Pitts," unless it's Kyle Pitts Jr., I'm coming out with the baby powder. Mama, I got to do this.
Kyle Pitts Jr. can't be Kyle Pitts? Jeez.
Oh, yeah, that's what I said. Unless it's Kyle Pitts Jr. I'm
well,
just.
What about Kyle Pitts Jr.?
Well, I mean, that's why I say when you talk about can't miss, like you think certain guys of, hey, well, if so-and-so goes to, and a lot of people think Zach Wilson might be destined for failure just because he's going to the Jets, right? I mean, so a lot of it is fit, but name a team that picks up Kyle Pitts where you're like, yeah, that just doesn't work.
Detroit.
Yeah. Detroit.
That's one.
This is a say it out loud thing. We said the same thing about Trevor Lawrence, right? Where it's like, what's more likely? Trevor Lawrence is like Matt Stafford in Jacksonville, or he's like Peyton Manning in Indianapolis. What's more likely? He goes to Detroit and can revive the franchise, or he falls to Detroit and he just becomes another guy. Because Detroit eats him alive like they do to every other player outside of Calvin Johnson and Barry Sanders.
All right, but let me ask that about Trevor Lawrence. I mean, Ben, you mentioned this in the show meeting. Trevor Lawrence is going to a team that won one game. I mean, is there a chance that the struggles in Jacksonville are kind of more problematic than we anticipate?
Well, it's bad. But the thing about Trevor Lawrence is the one thing we've gotten used to doing is celebrating him, even if it's not really worth celebrating. When he throw a 10-yard curl, oh my God, did you see that? I think what it is when you talk about Trevor Lawrence, bigger than just being the number one pick and reviving a franchise, he's potentially trying to take over Patrick Mahomes as being the face of the NFL. That's what they want him to do in a place that outside of pools at the stadium, no taxes, there ain't much to talk about in Duval.
That's Take Three. We do it each and every day here at this time. We got more to come here on 3 and Out. Talking some college football. What might the future of that look like in terms of branding? A couple of universities already trying to get out in front. We'll break that down next. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here on 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you were with us. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio, at Pigskin Radio. We are streaming live at ESPNCoastal.com, live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. And we may have seen a glimpse into the future of college football branding over the last couple of weeks. I know Central Florida, at their spring game, had players' Twitter handles on the back where their names were. I don't believe that is going to be allowed for a real game moving forward, at least not yet. But we've also seen multiple schools, including Florida State, looking at building infrastructure to facilitate name, image, and likeness things that I believe, BJ, wherever you come down on the issue, a lot of colleges believe, and people that follow the sport say, look, it's going to happen. I mean, it's on a path to happening, and schools already out there facilitating those efforts when they come about in terms of educating players on how to go about name, image, and likeness issues, certainly there as well.
Well, let's hear. It's a good thing that we are redefining amateurism, expanding amateurism. I mean, Ben, I guess, there are countless examples, I think, across the country of schools starting to either prepare for this or already implementing changes. What, in your mind, you lived it, is the best way to go about it?
I like the approach that Florida State is doing. I think that being able to have the course is going to do more than the actual branding company, because branding companies are nice because they have to be, not because they need to be. If I walk into a branding company and they don't know me when I walk through the door and I'm doing all these introductions, they don't know who the hell I am, and they're just trying to cater to the fact of what I do. I think that what happens is, BJ, is I'm always talking about transferable skills away from the game of football. If less than 1% go pro in a sport that can actually go pro, they're trying to show them that, listen, why don't you start utilizing some of these relationships that you have? Because number one, these branding companies gonna help you get a job. Like, forget making money off your name and image likeness. They're gonna show you how to interview, show you how to be presentable, show you what not to have on your social media pages. Because I mean, in the future they said your resume is gonna be what's your username, what's your password. Let me see how you really are. But I do think, BJ, think about this once again. Don't sound like amateurism when you're, quote, investing in your employees. I mean, student athletes. That's what it sounds like to me. Hey, we got employees, student athletes that have an opportunity to generate revenue for themselves. Let's show them how to do it. Who's already doing this? I'll take Nick Saban. He's the best one. Nick Saban does national commercials. You know why? Because he has an agent. Nick Saban does movies. You know why? Because he has a talent agent. Not the same person. These are two different people. And all I'm saying is, with a situation like this is, and it goes back to something Kevin said again, reference Kevin a lot today. Kevin be dropping them gems. Sometimes Kevin,
I'm here.
No, I'm just saying, sometimes, the truth hurts, and sometimes it's very, very direct. Some of these young people need to know that we're not all in the same, stratosphere as far as like marketing or marketing dollars. BJ, you talking about a young lady at Florida State who has over 1 million followers, meaning every time she presses send, 1 million people can see it because she's not from America. I think what happens is they can utilize that. But I also think it's going to be, if you don't take the course and go straight to the branding, it's not going to work. I'm just telling you, you're going to have to take the course first. I heard somebody say this. The reason why you take the course is this. You want to know what questions to ask. That lets you know who's in the room for you and who isn't. I got to be able to know what to ask these people. So I think it is a step in the right direction. Florida State is trying to be ahead of the curve. Yes, it's going to be used for recruiting, but $1,500 for a speaking engagement or $1,500 for a local commercial sounds good to me. If I'm like, I go back to when I was in college, and after they paid my tuition summer fee, they said $1,700. Listen, I don't know about direct deposits, but I can count, and I wanted that cheese. So I just think that too. I think about how many former players would have benefited from something like this had they had this when they was there, because certain guys got tremendous careers when they done. So Florida State, don't like to give them credit, but I got to give it to them when they ahead of the curve, and shout out to them Seminoles.
And again, so we shall see what happens here with the name, image, and likeness, but a lot of schools taking steps to already head in that direction. Some other news this afternoon from Nicole Auerbach with The Athletic. The NCAA Division I Council apparently has approved a one-time transfer rule. Won't go, I think that's not official until Thursday, she said in her tweet, but that would mean that all athletes will be able to transfer once and be eligible immediately. So that apparently approved by the NCAA Division I Council, not official until tomorrow when the meeting's in, but that is apparently right there on the table and ready to go.
Well, very good. I mean, Ben, we've talked about that for a while, Kevin, that you should just be able to transfer. Like, I don't understand all the rules and limitations and guidelines and why you have to get permission and then only this school and then you got to sit out a year. I don't understand all that. I mean, coaches are able to change jobs. Obviously, players should be able to change programs in all sports. So I still think you should be able to transfer. If you want to transfer twice. But I think this is a step in the right direction. This is good news as amateurism kind of moves forward and redefines itself.
Yeah, I'm happy for the players. I think it's too many restrictions for them. I mean, this rule, that code of conduct or these rules and regulations for these student athletes keeps on growing. I mean, I'm 18 years old, 19 years old. I don't want to be here anymore. How did it work out with Colorado and Mel Tucker? How did that go? Oh, that's right. It didn't go. He went over to Michigan State. Nobody said a word. And they're getting paid to go over there and coach. So I just think it's a step in the right direction. I know that the great Dick Vitale said it's going to, it's going to ruin college athletics. No, it's not. It means that I don't have to be bound by, this national letter of intent. I mean, I didn't know I was signing my rights away too and all these different things. But yeah, shout out to the NCAA for trying to do the right thing by the student athletes. That transfer portal is going to get bigger, Kevin, but at least you get that one time, which I think is good.
Get bigger. I mean, it's one of those things where, the transfer portal is full of guys right now looking for places to go. But I mean, again, this is one of those things where I think makes sense when you're talking about college athletics. It's like, hey, sometimes you make a commitment and it didn't work out for whatever reason, or the coach leaves or what have you. And you get a one-time chance to go and not have to sit out, immediately eligible, ready to play. I mean, I think we can see this as the logical next step, given how many dudes are getting waivers anyway. BJ, I know the NCAA obviously has their stories going against them where they deny somebody a waiver. That doesn't make sense. But, I mean, by and large, over the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of players transfer and get the waiver to go ahead and be eligible anyway. So this seems like the next logical step where, hey, instead of the waiver process, look, you get one free one and you don't have to sit out. You're eligible immediately to go ahead and play. Just do it. And apparently that's going to get final approval officially tomorrow. But again, it seems like the next logical step from what was kind of already in practice in a lot of cases anyways. Given you just had to get a waiver.
One thing that I've struggled with through all this, and maybe you guys can help me, what is the argument against this? Like, if a student athlete wants to transfer once, wants to transfer twice, I mean, regular students transfer, coaches move jobs sometimes every year, especially assistant coaches. And that's the reality of the situation. I mean, people change jobs, people change all kinds of things. What is the concern, or what is the fear, or what is the argument against just letting players transfer?
Well, my guess would be from the coaching and administrative standpoint, it would come down to recruiting. It's like, hey, I'm trying to put together, because if anybody can do it, then obviously anybody can do it one time for free. And you look at building your roster. I'm just looking at it from a coaching standpoint and say, look, am I recruiting 21 guys, or am I going to have 16 guys all transfer? And now I can either look for transfers, or I can go sign 6-7 more guys that maybe I wasn't planning on, or am I now going to end up with a roster full of freshmen? Am I specifically going to pull a Texas State? Am I just going to quit recruiting altogether and just get transfer guys and have a roster of – and I think that's what people worry about is, hey, is it just complete roster turnover each and every year? And how do you balance that out with, hey, you're telling me I can only recruit, or in the case I can only sign X number of guys out of high school, but I'm getting that plus more transferring out of my program, and it's hard to replace those guys. It's hard to know what to, I guess, promise kids in high school that you're trying to get to come to school saying, look, I may not have a spot. Maybe I do have a spot. And now 6 more dudes just transferred out. And yes, now I do have a spot. Maybe that's the concern from the coaching personnel standpoint, that how do I strategically develop a plan when you could have mass numbers of guys dip all at once that maybe you weren't planning for. And again, I'm not saying it does that, but I'm saying that if you have a senior class graduate and 10 other dudes who are unhappy with their playing time or whatever transfer, obviously you just lost potentially 30 players off your roster all at once. That's hard to just come up with and say, yeah, okay, we'll just recruit all those guys. So I think that might be one counter to it. It may not be the strongest argument, but I think that might be one counter to why people would be somewhat against that.
I think it reveals the flaws in recruiting. Most of the time, we look at these final recruiting class and these rankings, and we thinking that I don't care what nobody says. I got recruited. No, I wasn't a quarterback or a running back, but I know that stretching the truth, which is what they say in recruiting, is how you get a certain. Like, you ever seen a recruiting class? You go, why would both of them go there? And I'm like, yeah, why would both of them go there? Because they telling guys similar things on the recruiting trail. And Nick Saban said it the best. If these guys get to just leave and go where they want, we can't control them. I control players to know if once you get here, I'm gonna make it really, really hard for you to go somewhere else or go where you want to go. So if unfeathered ownership of what they do and how they move around 18 to 24-year-olds, God forbid we do that. These coaches, like I said, when we had home games, when I was in Florida, we still stayed in the hotel because they don't trust us. They don't trust us to spend the night in our home the night before the game and make it to the stadium. They do not trust us. Get y'all behind. So if they don't trust us to do that, you think they're going to trust us with national letters of intent? I'm just saying it's going to – I love recruiting. I love what it means. I mean, I got recruited, but there are a lot of flaws in it. And like you said, Kevin, you got a potential to have a huge turnover. Man, we signed 25 guys who walked away, 25 of them because it didn't work out. You're getting the best players in the country. I just think – we think that, what happened with Lincoln Riley and the young man that wanted to leave, that happens more often than not. But we give Lincoln Riley the benefit of the doubt because he's the name we know talking about we got a standard here at Oklahoma. I ain't going to tell you what the young man told y'all, what y'all could do with that standard. He wanted to get up out of there, and you wouldn't let him. That's what
I think that was a conference rule for Lincoln Riley that he was quoting there as well. But I understand kind of your broader point with that. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens and what the transfer portal, people are like, it won't be anything that big a deal. And now it's just crammed with guys looking for places to play. And I think somebody said there's actually more guys in the transfer portal than there are actual places for guys to transfer to right now in terms of available spots. So that's already been much larger than I think anybody envisioned it ever becoming. We've got more to come, 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We are streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com, on your mobile device with the ESPN app. Good to have you along here on 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you were with us here on this Wednesday. We will get to some pre-draft smoke screening going on around the National Football League. We'll also talk to Doc Herbert, Platinum Sombrero Podcast, in the final hour of the program. The Braves and Marlins tonight, 6:05. We'll have pregame coverage for you as the Braves try to win a game against the Miami Marlins here, possibly tonight and or tomorrow afternoon, or both would be preferable if you are a Braves fan. But speaking of the Braves, kind of a weird happy birthdays out there today. Greg Maddux, Steve Avery, Dave Justice, all with birthdays today. Yes, that Dave Justice that stonewalled our own Ben Troop have an autograph so many years ago because had to go hang with Halle Berry and not give young Ben an autograph.
I mean, I still love you, D Justice, man. It's all good. I ran up to the car. I saw him giving the autographs. Had a nice little Porsche back in the day. I went in. Hey, Dave, okay. All right. But you know what? It's all good. I mean, Halle Berry was waiting on him. It's all good. But no, I mean, that's some pretty unique company, Kevin. I'm just saying. I mean, I wonder how the locker room was when those guys actually had their birthdays, how they celebrated that. That's some pretty I'm just saying that's some pretty big time names all born on the same day.
Which is kind of
very cool. Happy birthday. Yeah, very cool. Some absolute brave superstars. I mean, Ben, I'm kind of like Kevin. I didn't know if you were over that yet, man.
No, I don't get over stuff. I hold grudges. I do a better job of holding grudges now that I'm older. Never really seen David Justice since then, but if I see him again, I'm going to be like, listen, David, I mean, you did me wrong. I'm going to try to guilt trip him. I'm going to try to do something go viral. And listen, and if I just happen to have something, you gonna do the right thing and sign this now? Make it out to Kevin Thomas.
Hey, I'll take a Dave Justice autograph at this point. Well after the date he's played with the Braves, but I'll take Dave Justice. So you were trying to get him to autograph something while he was already in the car, or
no. He was autographing. The thing is, he was already autographing stuff. It's not like he wasn't doing it. He was like he had his window down. He was autographing stuff. My mom said, "Go." So when I ran up to his car and I knocked on his window and he let it down. I'm like, he took off. I'm like, what you let? It wasn't me. He don't even know me like that. I was a kid then. But I'm still a David Justice fan. I mean, I'm not gonna let little things get to me like that. He wasn't. I just think that I deserve better than that. And now that I'm an adult, if I
it's obvious Ben has put this behind him and is willing to
No, Kevin, I'm just saying, Kevin, you got. I'm not saying David Justice one of my heroes. My mama took me, my brother, my sister to the game, was in the nosebleeds. Kevin, you run up to one of your heroes, Kevin, and you go, hey, man, what's up? He just blow, he just no, like he can't see you. You're going to have a problem with that. Just saying. BJ, one of your heroes, just be like, I mean, listen, all I'm saying is this. Playing with the Tigers, went to a game. Oh, my God. I see it. And I went to a game. Kid asked me for an autograph, gave it to him. Kid asked, Troy for an autograph, gave it to him. Another teammate of mine asked for an autograph. He said, quote, nah, kid, not right now. Kid said, you said no to a fan. That's why you guys suck anyway. And walked off.
Well, you weren't getting autographed after that. If after that conversation,
I'm just saying.
And I'm heading out. We've got more to come. Final hour right around the corner, including you got to love pre-draft smoke screening and things getting thrown off. And we've got some great stuff regarding the Falcons coming up next hour. Doc Herbert going to join us. We'll talk some Braves baseball with him as well. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. We're streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com, also on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Final hour next. great to be here with you on a 3 and Out on this Wednesday afternoon, final hour. Glad you are with us all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Plenty to get to this hour. We'll chat with Doc Herbert, talk some Braves baseball, as the Braves have put Max Fried and Christian Pache on the injured list for 10 days. So trying to figure out what's going on with Max Fried. Also, Pache with the groin tightness. He is obviously not having a good go of it at the plate either, but both will be gone for at least the next 10 days. So we'll talk to Doc Herbert about that and the Braves finishing up this 4-game series with the Marlins over the next evening and tomorrow afternoon. So he'll join us in about 20 minutes here on the program. But we see it all the time around this part of the pre-draft where it starts getting close. We know who the first couple of picks are, but then the smoke screening goes out there of, hey, we really like this guy. Could that be the case with Mac Jones out of Alabama? And 49ers, hey, we really love Mac Jones. And looking at what the Falcons could do. If you're a team looking to trade, you always start throwing out hype stuff to maybe make folks get anxious about wanting to trade up, improve your draft stock, maybe with what your pick is worth. So some great examples of smoke screening potentially going on. We got some audio from Get Up this morning on ESPN. Teddy Bruschi and Kimberly Martin talking about Atlanta and their plans at number 4. Let's hear what Teddy Bruschi had to say, and I'll come back and let you guys respond, talking about Atlanta there at number 4.
If you're the Falcons right now, are you looking to bring in players to help Matt Ryan try and win a championship again, or are you looking to draft his eventual replacement?
Yeah, like I said about the smoke screen season, there you go right there. You make everyone think that you're okay with drafting a quarterback and developing under Matt Ryan, but you got to take advantage of the quarterback desperation, which is in this draft, and everyone wanting maybe to sneak up if their guy falls to 4 and go ahead and get him, because I think they should build, and they need to. Usually head coaches come in and they'll want to stackpile, not quarterbacks, but draft picks in terms of building a foundational model for their team. So I would say definitely take advantage of the 4th overall pick, trade down, try to see if you can get some building blocks.
Yeah, great opportunity for the Falcons to smoke screens. Talking about the drafting quarterback. I've said it for a while. They don't necessarily need to if you have belief that Matt Ryan still has plenty left in the tank. How much of because you've heard it since day one with a lot of mock draft guys. Falcons love Trey Lance. Justin Fields sent the full contingent up to watch Justin Fields work out earlier this week. The maximum allowed number of guys that you're allowed to have at one of these workouts, they all did it. The Falcons maxed it out there to watch Justin Fields go work out, leading you to believe the Falcons really want to draft quarterback. How much of that is smokescreen to try to get high value out of that number 4 pick to get more picks to stockpile players that you really want to rebuild your franchise with?
Well, I think you always try to create a sense of urgency around your pick, right? Or a sense of extreme value, like, oh my goodness, we're here at 4. We could take anybody on the board, or maybe we really like Lance, or whoever that somebody else like. I mean, I've often thought about this. I mean, Kevin, we've talked about this, Ben, for years with the draft. I mean, does it really help you if you're an organizational representative and you come out about the draft and you're honest about your position? I mean, if you're representing the Falcons or the Jaguars or the Panthers or whoever, and you come out and tell the truth about what you're thinking and who you want to pick, that hurts your leverage, right? And I'm not saying you're coming out and you're playing mind games, but I think sometimes maybe you just talk kind of platitudinally, or you say, yeah, we like this guy, we like that guy, and maybe some stuff gets out that's true, maybe it's not true about your interest, but I absolutely think it's your job to play up the value of where you are. And if that means, you kind of play up some hype around a player, another player, a position, yeah, that's smart, because the draft is about value. The draft is about not just who I get, but who I could get. That's the whole intrigue of the draft, right? That's the whole theory of the draft. Teams trade up not because they know for a fact a team's going to take a player. It's because they could take a player. And if you're Atlanta and maybe your end goal, I don't know if it is, who knows? I have no idea. But if you're Atlanta and maybe your goal is to trade down, get another first-round pick, get second, third-round picks, get a future high pick, you want to create the perception that you are very interested in a quarterback, because a team that's behind you, if they know you're not interested in a quarterback, there's no need for anybody to trade up. or Pitts. Maybe you're really not interested in Pitts, but you say, hey, man, we really like Kyle Pitts. Then do want that player. It gives you more leverage in potential negotiations. And I'm not saying there's not truth to, what teams say. I'm saying I don't know. I'm saying that I do think some of it may have some truth. Some of it may be, playing some games, because the draft is about, Ben, you lived it. The draft's about intrigue, about drama, about maximizing your value, about making everybody think you might do something. And for as much as we think we have the draft figured out, how many picks have there been over the years, in recent years, where you're going, wait, what? Ben, you and I were in Nashville, right? Cleveland Farrell, when he went in the top 5, we were in a room full of draft experts, and everybody went, wow, I didn't know that was going to happen. I didn't know that was coming. So I do think there's more drama and intrigue here than people think.
Look, I'm not the best. I'm Chris. You're gonna have to show me how to play poker. All drafting is how good are you at bluffing? Because the whole thing about it is, BJ. I think you just said it. Even if Terry Fontenot, Arthur Smith, Arthur Blank came out and said who they gonna get, people gonna still think they lying. Nah. Because it's about storylines. Teddy Bruschi is asking a question, and he's saying to himself, "Oh man, I think it's just all about this to be able to get that." Well, what if it is that? But we don't know. The thing is, they got the 4th pick. We know that the top 3 picks are going to be quarterbacks, right? And we know that they got a chance to get the best player available, or the top player available at every position at number 4. That being included, the next best quarterback coming out. Terry Fontenot has been around the league a long time. He helped build what New Orleans is right now through the draft. If Matty Ice is going to be there for the next 2, maybe 3 years. If they get a quarterback, he's going to sit. Kyle Pitts is one of the best tight end prospect you've seen in a long time. Penei Sewell, you can put him in. He definitely helps your offensive line. But because you don't say anything, BJ, that makes perception even crazier. Terry, how you feel about the draft? I think it's all about making sure you get the best player available. I am saying a whole bunch of nothing. I am not telling you anything, because that makes 5, 6, and 7. That makes them do what are you going to do? You got to wait and see. So after that 3rd pick is gone, BJ, and if that 3rd pick, if they do not say Justin Fields, the intrigue starts, because you got all the leverage, which is what you want. That's the benefit of picking in the top 10. You got a lot of leverage for those guys coming behind you. But the draft is always like that. BJ, me and you was at the draft of 2019. Atlanta needed a D lineman, and they had 2 first-round picks. They got 2 offensive linemen, right? You talk about Cleveland Farrell. You talk about Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones going top 10. People like, what? So I just think that if you Terry Fontenot, look, I didn't come over here to Atlanta to get all nervous now. I've been with the same organization for 19 years. I think they play their cards right, and we just got to wait and see.
And again, I think, if I'm the Atlanta, you could really create intrigue as well if you start floating, hey, we like Penei Sewell. Maybe we want to help Matt Ryan stay upright. You talk about intrigue and teams wanting to move up. You start making the Bengals nervous there at number 5. You start making a lot of teams nervous. Hey, you're going to miss out potentially on the top tackle in the draft. We've got one more soundbite here. This is Kimberly Martin, also on Get Up, talking about Atlanta and their potential plans there at number 4.
Kimberly, what are we hearing about what we expect from the Falcons, who, as you told us, will be at Justin Fields' pro day today?
I think what you just heard from Teddy and Mike is indicative of what the NFL feels. I don't think the NFL knows what the Falcons are doing, which is just what Terry Fontenot wants. But I don't get, as much as I hear Justin Fields and Trey Lance, people in the NFL sort of mock those 2 guys. They fit what the Falcons want. But I don't get the same level of desperation as some other teams, like the Patriots or the 49ers. I don't feel that with the Falcons. I don't hear people saying that they really need to move on from Matt Ryan right now because he's done. I think people can see them trading back and stockpiling some picks.
And again, I think I've said for a while, I think that could be the smart pick. Again, other teams are desperate. And while it will be nice to have Justin Fields, as Ben said, if you think Matt Ryan's good for 2 or 3 more years, there will be other quarterbacks available in future drafts, potentially for you to go out there and make a move on. But if you feel like you can win now, you're not desperate to get a quarterback. It's not like Matt Ryan is 40 and he's like, dude, we don't know if he's going to be able to make it another season. That's different. Matt Ryan is just on the other side of 30. I get that. But stockpiling picks and moving back, not necessarily a bad play for Atlanta either. So to me, we have said it all along. The draft starts at number 4 with Atlanta, unless San Francisco does something nobody expects. If they don't take quarterback, then it gets real weird real quick. But the draft has, to me, always started with Atlanta. And what are they going to do at number 4? Because if they don't go quarterback, it changes things. If they take an offensive lineman, it certainly changes what falls below them in the draft. To me, Atlanta controls how this thing unfolds at number 4.
And I don't know if there are any examples or many recent examples of this, if you guys can remember, but could Atlanta kind of play the moment? Could they trade back a couple of times, right? Like, could you be at 4, trade back to 6 or 7 or 8, sit there, and then if there's somebody that another team's desperate for, you trade back again to 17, 18, 19, and maybe you stay in the first round, get a defensive player, and you get double the equity for a first-round draft pick. I mean, something like that wouldn't stun me.
Unnamed sources get on my nerves. I mean, when you talk about Teddy Bruschi and Kimberly, they can't give out their sources. When they start saying they said this is what they're saying. Who is there? Who are they? And the thing is, that's why they can go and say these things. I mean, if it turns out, Kevin, that they use this fourth pick to leverage, but it's what she said. We don't really know. Now think about this. They're going to, Justin Fields Pro Day. We don't. Trey Lance fits what they're doing, but we don't know what Atlanta's doing. That's saying a lot of stuff within one statement. But Terry Fontenot, they trust him. They trust in the decision that he's going to make. And if we're being honest, unless it's Trey Lance, they really can't mess this up. Meaning, okay, if they get Justin Fields, boom. They get Kyle Pitts, ain't nobody gonna go crazy. Ain't nobody gonna lose their mind. They get Penei Sewell. What scares me about them is if you draft back and then you get somebody, we be like, what? That's the thing about drafting back, moving back, BJ and Kevin, is you don't get your pick then you got to pick what's left compared to getting the guy you wanted. So,
but the counter to that is this is largely considered one of the deeper drafts at multiple positions where if you get the 3rd or 4th wide receiver in this draft, you're still good. If you get the 3rd or 4th offensive lineman, you probably still got a good pick. If you get the 3rd or 4th DB, you're probably still getting a quality guy. I think, BJ, moving back, to me, unless you just go and draft somebody that had like a 3rd round grade on them or something, I don't know that there's a way the Falcons can really mess this up. You've got a new coach, new system. You have an offensive line that needs to be reworked. You have defensive issues all over the place. I don't think that there's a place you could draft. This is me talking. There's not a position that you could draft right now that I'd be like, I don't get it. I mean, any draft pick you make at a position right now, I think would make sense. Now, are there certain guys you go, outside of overdrafting, I don't think that there's a position they could go with if they back that. To me, I would be like, oh, what a waste. They have needs pretty much everywhere, and a coach, Arthur Smith, trying to come in and put his stamp on there. I hate saying this about Atlanta sports teams drafting, but I don't know that there's a way they could mess this up.
Well, who knows about that? But you talk about the depth, and Ben, I agree 100% about this draft. And who knows? You never know. So I don't want to say this is guaranteed to happen. But a lot of the recent mocks have guys like Alex Leatherwood, Greg Rousseau, Nick Bolton, Caleb Farley, even going in the 2nd round, Pat Freiermuth. I mean, these are being projected as 2nd round picks, where I think most years some of those guys would be top 10 picks. So I do think if there is a draft to trade back in, this will be a great year to do it, potentially, if you don't want a QB.
We've already been seasoned, BJ and Kevin, when it comes to pro sports teams drafting in Atlanta. We understand how they do. We've already decided no matter who they get, we're going to be like, oh, that's cool. No matter who it is. Because if Justin Fields goes 3, when we talked all about Mac Jones, and Mac Jones goes 4, we're going to be like, what? But then we're going to start saying, well, you know what? See, when it's your team, you start saying, all right, it's cool. I mean, we like Trey Young.
I mean, to me, though, I've said this. If Justin Fields goes 3, to me, it's a no-brainer for Atlanta to try to move back, right? I mean, if you can't, you could still get a great player there at number 4, non-quarterback. And I would go non-quarterback 100% if that's the case at 3. But, yeah, I mean, to me, if the 49ers take Justin Fields, to me, that clears the way of thinking for me, because Mac Jones, for much of the time, has not even been talked about as a top 3, 4, 5 pick. We've all talked ad nauseum about how we don't get the hype necessarily about Trey Lance as a top 10 pick. at quarterback, right? To me, that just clears the path for if somebody wants to hop up here and get the number one tackle, get the number one D in, you have an infinitely valuable pick there, and or you can make that yourselves and be perfectly fine. So, I mean, to me, that clears the water a little bit if I'm Atlanta. You get your top choice on the board at pretty much every single position and a very coveted spot now because all the talk's been about who desperately wants a quarterback. What about the team that desperately want a tackle or desperately want the top cover guy? Or they're all out there, and that to me makes your number 4 pick extremely valuable. If San Francisco goes Justin Fields there at number 3, to me it cleans up the options for Atlanta, in my opinion.
I just know this: in 2006, Norm Child was the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans, coming from where? USC. Jeff Fisher was the head coach, playing where in college? USC. I heard that they wanted Matt Leinart. I heard that Jeff Fisher wanted Matt Leinart, right? And I heard that Norm Child wanted Matt Leinart. Bud Adams comes in and said, I am from Houston. Vince Young is from Houston. I am getting Vince Young. That's how we got him. I mean, I'm just saying that it could get crazy on draft day because, Arthur Smith may want this player. Terry Fontenot going to be like, who the GM? I'm just saying it could get crazy with that 4th pick. Don't mess it up, Atlanta. Don't get Mac Jones, man, because just don't get Mac Jones.
There's the battle of the answers going on there. Arthur Blank, Arthur Smith. Well, who knows? We'll have to wait and see. We've got more to come here on 3 and Out. We'll switch gears, talk a little Braves baseball. Doc Herbert will join us when we return. Platinum Sombrero podcast next. It's 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be here with you on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Glad to have you along here on the show. Got Braves and Marlins coming up in just a little bit, 6:05 with pregame coverage for you this evening. Braves just got shellacked last night and lose Christian Pache and Max Fried to the injured list. Joining us here to talk about all that and more involving the Braves from the Platinum Sombrero Podcast, Doc Herbert joins us here on 3 Out. Doc, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am spectacular. How are we doing today, boys?
Hey, we're doing fantastic. Max Fried, I guess we can debate whether the hamstring injury is real or if this is just a 10-day break to try to figure it out. But by and large, though, your ace has looked anything but in those first 3 starts.
Yeah, when you have a season like Max had last year, 7-0 with a 2.25 ERA, if he pitched a little bit more, he probably would have been in consideration for Cy Young. There's bound to be a little bit of regression right there, but what we're seeing now, it goes way beyond regression. I think, his ERA is over 11 and he's not giving up a lot of really, really hard contact, but they're still falling, even if they're 10 miles per hour off of the bat and they go for a hit, then they still count as hits. So, last night was the worst start of his career, hands down. It is interesting that the hamstring injury didn't manifest itself until after he was running the bases and it was already coming out of the game for pitching stuff. So whether it's real or not, I'm not sure, but I'm not really surprised that he went on the IL. He just needs to get right. And it's entirely possible this is just like a mental break for him because something being off. And if the Braves are going to make it back to the playoffs or make a deep run this year, they've got to have a healthy Max Fried.
I mean, do you have any long-term concerns with Max Fried, or is this just something where it's a bad couple of starts, and if it was in the middle of the year, maybe it wouldn't be a huge deal?
I'm kind of tending a little bit more towards the second half. Like if this happened in July, maybe you give him the phantom IL stint then. He had Tommy John in his past. He's dealt with some blisters and stuff. He's never really had a lot of hamstring stuff before. So that's kind of concerning, but for now, you just chalk it up to kind of stumbling out of the gate a little bit. Even the best pitchers can have rough Aprils every once in a while. So for now, I'm certainly keeping, I will say, cautiously optimistic on that. It's looking like he's only going to miss one start because of some off days they have built in next week. So if he gets back in 10 days and has a good start then we can start talking about the return of Max Fried.
And Doc, what do you think is most concerning right now? I mean, is it the pitching or is it the lineup?
I don't think either the pitching or the lineup is as bad as it has appeared so far. I'd be a little bit more wary of the bullpen than anything right now. Chris Martin going down is obviously that is a huge gut punch right there. Ideally, it's not going to be anything long term. Once you start throwing around shoulder inflammation, it gets a little bit more serious. Some of the guys that are out there, like, look, we know that Melanson is gone, and we know that Green is not necessarily anywhere. There are some really good pieces out in that Braves bullpen, but it's not as good as a unit as it was last year. So the margin for error is much smaller. So when you see a guy like AJ Minter, who last year was like super reliable, when he's coming in and he's struggling like he has been, and Chris Martin's not there, then when your top end guys really aren't there to kind of prop up the bullpen, it really magnifies the struggles of guys like Nate Jones and guys, it seems like kind of everybody right now. I know that's maybe a slight overreaction there. I mean, the lineup is going to hit. Even when Freddie Freeman is hitting like 200 right now, he's still scalding the ball. Marcell Ozuna is coming around. He went 3 for 3 last night, hit his first home run. Ozzie started to get some. Dansby's hitting the ball harder. This team is still gonna score some runs, so I'm not as worried about them. Starting pitching, ideally Max is fine, and he'll come back. Morton has looked good. Huascar Ynoa has been a revelation. There's still some really good pieces there. But if I had to judge between the two, I'd say the pitching is more concerning.
Certainly, and to that end, we asked this on the show earlier. I'll ask you, as far as that bullpen is concerned, who do you trust right now out of that bullpen?
Man, this is going to be a short answer. Tyler Matzik. that's kind of about it right now. He's, Will Smith. Will Smith has a track record, and he's had moments where he did look really good. You go back to his first outing of the year, he struck out the side against Philadelphia, and that was great. But then there have been a couple of things here and there, and he's not exactly giving up soft contact. When he gave up the walk-off to Washington, it was one of the hardest balls Juan Soto had ever hit. And if there's anything Juan Soto does, it's that he hits the ball hard. So when he's setting records against your guy, that's no good. Luke Jackson is the same as ever. Nate Jones has, once again, he's looked okay at sometimes, and then he's just not getting the job done. So anytime you can put Tyler Matzik in, I think you do it. I think while Sean Newcomb has the Bulldog mentality, you lean on that where you can. And as long as Jacob Webb is up, I think that you could really count on those three for the moment. But once again, with Newcomb, when you have three reliable guys and one guy's track record is like 4 games long for really being able to string things together, it's a little concerning.
So with the rotation now, who is the pressure on, and who are some of the guys that we could see step in maybe over the next couple of weeks in that 5th starter's role?
I think the pressure really is going to come on Ian Anderson more than anybody. Normally I would say Charlie Morton, because he was kind of brought in to be the number 2 behind Freed, but Charlie's the grizzled vet. Nothing really seems to get to him. So I think if there is any pressure on him, you wouldn't notice. Somebody like Anderson, you're seeing some good stuff out of him, but he's giving up a lot more home runs that you like. He hasn't returned to that 2020 form either. And when you start looking at some of the younger guys that brought up through the rebuild, your Freed, Soroka, Anderson type guys, I think that he is going to want to step up and be that guy. For any amount of time that Freed is out, I know that Bryce Wilson was somebody that was perceived as going to be the guy who's going to be the 5th starter while we were waiting for Soroka to get back. So he's been down at the alternate site pitching every 5th day, waiting for his time to step in. So while Max is out, I think Bryce is going to be the guy that steps in there. Some really good results in spring training. He's really learned how to pitch to his strengths, which I think is great. Still not a perfect pitcher, but he'd be a much better option than Max right now. And I think you're going to start to see, Tucker Davidson got recalled in Max's place today, not necessarily to make any starts, but I think if there's any extended absence for Max or for Soroka, you're going to start to see some of the guys that have made it to AAA and start breaking through. Your Tucker Davidson, your Jaciel De La Cruz type guys.
And Doc, how much of the early season struggles are just the fact that it is early in the season? I mean, guys like Acuna and Ozzie and those guys, they've never really been on a team that struggled before. How much of this is just, we know you you guys won the NL East 3 times in a row. Maybe this is just you guys having to work your way through this division, which is really, really good this year.
It is important to remember, we played 11 games so far, and last season the 12-game mark, which happens tonight, would have been 20% of the way through the season. And for now, tonight, we're like 7.5% of the way through the season. If this was an NFL season, we would be like 2 minutes into the first quarter of game 2. Still a long, long way to go. And like I alluded to earlier, you're having some guys like Ozzie. He started 0 for 19, but he's not striking out a lot. He's still hitting the ball hard. He has just kind of had a little bit of bad luck there. And it's still early enough in the season to where he's not to the point yet where he's like, man, I just can't catch a break. The sample size is small enough to where it's only going to take like a game or two for some of these guys to start to turn their numbers around. But you mentioned the division being that much harder. Yeah, I mean, not only did the teams around the Braves get better, but I mean, there's a target on their backs now. Everybody wants the crown. Everybody wants to come for the king. So these early season games against Philadelphia, Washington, Miami, these are really important. And for every time that the Braves lose anytime the Braves lose a game, it's good for the other guys. Anytime that they're losing in a demoralizing fashion, like what happened with the Alec Boehm slide the other night, that's super demoralizing. You don't just want to beat your enemy. you want to beat your enemy down. You want to hurt their feelings while they are losing to you, right? So I think the Braves are kind of having a little bit of course correction. They've had some really good bounces over the past couple years. They've had some really good luck swing their way. The universe is kind of righting itself a little bit right now. But like I said, long way to go this season.
Yeah, Doc Herbert, Platinum Sombrero podcast joining us here. And Doc, one thing that isn't writing itself is Ronald Acuna and his trajectory up the charts here, man. Like the start that he's off to, I know people said, hey, he could be a top 7 or 8 player in Major League Baseball. Is he proven to be much better than that? When you look at some of the early numbers, he is right there in line with the dudes like Mike Trout.
We have all kind of been waiting for this moment. I think Acuna came up when he was 20. It seems like we have been watching him forever, but it hasn't even been 3 years that we have seen him. And guys, we're witnessing something right now. Like, we've known the talent was in there. We've known that one day Ronald Acuna is going to be an 8-win player, a 9-win player. He's going to take over from Mike Trout. I don't know if he's taking over for Trout yet, because that assumes that Trout is like falling off, and that just isn't happening. But when you start looking at what Acuna has done through his first 320 games, I'm referring to this is a tweet sent out by Ryan Spader, who's like the greatest statistician of this era, or compiler of stats. When you look at Acuna versus Hank Aaron, Mike Trout, Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays, any of those guys, Acuna's hanging with all of them with batting average, OBP, slugging. He's got more home runs than any of them through 320 games. And the only person who had him beat on stolen bases, I think, was Willie Mays. So we're not just projecting and saying one day he'll be this. I mean, the day is now. And it's still too early in the season to say he's on pace for this, he's going to do this thing, he's going to do that thing. But while we're on the topic, he's on pace to hit 65 home runs and steal 48 bases. That is inner circle Hall of Fame type stuff right there. Now, granted, he's got to keep that up for another 10, 12 years. But I'm serious. We could be witnessing the dawn of something that is just, we will always speak of this season highly for him.
Yeah.
And beyond.
Yeah, it's a truly incredible start he's off to. And as you said, the trajectory is just going at warp speed there for Ronald Acuna. Must see at bats every single night for him. Doc Herbert, Platinum Sombrero podcast, our guest here on 3 and Out. Doc, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll talk soon.
Appreciate it. And Braves and Marlins coming up tonight. We'll preview that as the Braves play tonight, tomorrow afternoon, trying to salvage at least a split in this series if they can. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Braves Marlins coming up in just a little bit. Game 3 of this series. They'll have afternoon baseball, 12:20 first pitch tomorrow. But Charlie Morton, BJ, tonight in the it seems like we've had a number of these here already in the early portion of the season in the position of, hey, it's up to you, big guy, to go out there and stop the bleeding here and get back on the right side of the Miami Marlins tonight. Another National League East baseball game here early in the season.
I'm probably staying away from Adam Duvall if I'm Morton. I mean, 5 of 8 in this series, 3 home runs, a couple of walks too. He's kind of been the offensive catalyst for just what's been a really impressive performance at the plate from the Miami Marlins. And maybe you look at it as, hey, we got to challenge him and we got to go after him. But I'm probably, especially given that, he used to play for the Braves and might have a little extra energy, I'm probably staying away from Adam Duvall tonight.
Yeah, Adam Duvall, man. I mean, I get it. The reason why he's with the Marlins right now is when he was with the Braves, he went. I mean, he had his best showing maybe of the year, Kevin, against the Marlins. And then I don't know why. I mean, I don't know what his average was, but to go up to 267, where was it before last night? We hope to make him look like the Adam Duvall of old. Don't make him look like, I said, is that Adam Duvall or Ronald Acuna over there with the freaking Marlins out there going crazy? But I do agree, BJ. Braves got to get back to their winning ways. I do agree with Doc. It's such a small sample size, but I expect so much from this Braves team. Kevin, I go back to before the series started. You was like, kind of can pad your stats against the Braves. Adam Duvall, he padded against the Braves. Hopefully, it won't be repeat itself tonight.
Sure, and again, you had Christian Pache on the IL along with Max Fried, BJ and Ben. I know he's got a lot of talent, out there, but again, it says a lot of his struggles early that with Ender Inciarte, you feel like it's no different. Right, with the guy out there, and maybe something similar to what we saw from Ronald Acuna when he came up. Really came up, started off well, had some struggles, spent a couple of weeks a little bit longer on the disabled list, came back, was kind of a new guy, and you'd like to see just a little more offense out of Pache to really have that impact. But again, kind of says a lot about his struggles that you don't really feel like there's going to be much difference between him and Ender Inciarte being in the lineup every night.
Well, it's part of the process. I mean, learning how to be a consistent hitter, especially, and as you mentioned earlier in the week, you've dealt with some ace pitchers out there, so I'm not worried about Pache, and I'm glad to have a guy like Ender Inciarte. I know a lot of people said the bench is a weak spot. Ender's been a Gold Glove, all-star caliber outfielder. He's a guy that's streaky at the plate, but when he gets hot, he's really good. So I'm not worried about that. I think Inciarte will do a nice job. I did want to ask you guys, you had the lineup changed a little bit, right? Freddie up to 2, Marcell up to 3, Ozzie down to 6. Well, all those guys seem to respond. I know it got kind of lost in the fact you give up 14 runs, but you scored 8. And I think Ozuna had his best game. Ozzie had a home run. Travis d'Arnaud got in on the action. So I think the lineup change seemed to have positive results.
I think so. Sense of urgency. I mean, even going back to Ender, I hope the Ender supersedes expectations, Kevin. That puts more pressure on Christian Pache than when he comes back to say, look, man, we are all replaceable. We want this to be your position, but it's not going to stop if you get hurt. I understand that being a pro is how you deal with adversity. We know you got the skills. Like we know you're in the bigs, but do you have the skills and the mindset consistently? And I do agree, BJ. Change of the lineup is good. I mean, do you still get the hit? Yes, you just hitting farther down in the lineup. I think Ozzie did, respond, as Kevin mentioned, though. You can't just hit a homer and just we don't hear from you again. Just it's okay to hit ground, hit grounders, man. Hit singles and doubles and triples. That's fine too. But 8 runs and you losing. We got to go back to the pitches, and then once again, that dreaded bullpen again. Kevin, how many years have we been talking about this Braves bullpen? We can't continue to win in spite of them at a certain point. Got to start winning because of them.
Well, I think largely, everybody in Major League Baseball has their concerns about their bullpen. But again, I think a lot of people coming in thought that it would be more of a bright spot than what it's been. And again, I thought the first series against the Phillies, some bad luck. They kept you in every game, but really since they've been at home, it has not looked great. So a lot of inconsistent play. And I know people say, well, they haven't been playing every day, got maybe some more off days than they think. Maybe, but you got to find a couple of guys that you can rely on that can go out there and give you consistent performance. I know sometimes it just isn't your night. I mean, that happens. Sometimes it's just not there. But more often than not, you have to be a guy that can come out there and hold down your end and pass it along to somebody else. And certainly last night was one of those games that got away from you. I mean, heck, we all see it. The Braves put 29 on the Marlins. I'm sure if you were doing Marlins radio the day after, you're like, oh, we got nobody we could trust in that bullpen. We just gave up a 29 piece. Well, I mean, some of that's going to happen. I think it's how you bounce back. As Doc said, and as you saw some good stuff from the offense last night, you got to couple it with great pitching. If you put up 8 tonight with Charlie Morton, you got to feel good that maybe you're headed in the right direction. I think we're still in the early portion of the season. It's getting magnified. I think maybe getting away from the National League East for a hot minute will probably also do this team some help from the momentum standpoint. So I think offensive effort tonight, a good pitching outing from Charlie Morton, and I think maybe you'll feel better going into an afternoon game on Thursday about leaving with a split. And if you do that, I think you can live with it going to Chicago.
Doc mentioned Tyler Matzik. Kev, is there a chance that if there's a high leverage, close situation tonight in the 8th or 9th, we could see Matzik, or is he still a 6th, 7th inning guy to you?
I don't know about 6. He's still a situational guy, I think, but he has been your most consistent to this point. I think it's just finding the confidence in somebody to go out there and get it done, and it's just going to take a good performance. If Luke Jackson has a good performance, maybe you trust him a little more. If AJ Minter can come out, have a solid performance, say, okay, now let's see if he can string 2 of those together. I think that's what you're looking for out of the bullpen. And of course, after a game like last night, you don't feel good about anybody because nobody was able to come in there and really make you feel better about it. So I think up until last night, you had seen some guys who had pitched okay. Tomlin had been fairly solid for. I think Tomlin, they had brought him in a couple situations where the bases were loaded or 2 runners were on. He was able to get you out of it and do some things. So I think last night was one of those nights. Hopefully you shake it off and you can move forward and get back in the win column. But yeah, right now, if I'm Brian Snitker, it's just who do you have that feeling about right now that can go out there and get me 3 outs? Tyler Matzik. And again, I've always kind of been a fan of sometimes the most important outs in the ball game aren't the last 3. They certainly are hyped up the most, but sometimes the 7th inning with a runner on second and you're up 1, that's the most important point in the ball game because you could give the lead up at that point and you need somebody that can come in. I think maybe more that's where you look for Tyler Matzik to say, look, high leverage outs late in the ball game, maybe not the 9th inning, but you're the guy we trust most to come in and get us out of this mess and move on. I think that's the role you'll see him in. And hopefully we won't have to rely on a guy trying to hold a 1-run lead tonight. Maybe have an easy win of their own. I'm trying to think, have the Braves really had one of those games where they just won by 6, 7 runs yet in 2021? I'm trying to think. The first 6 I know were fairly close. I don't think they have. So you'd maybe like to see one go the other way where it's like, hey, it's 9-2. Let's just go out there and get out of here and move on. I don't think they've had a lot of those yet.
I hope they do one tonight. I mean, I'm just saying, Kevin. I mean, I'm tired of. I mean, I get it. It's still early. I know we compared it to like the first 20 minutes of the first quarter of the NFL season, but the Braves need to be on the winning end of some of these games. And I think they might have got one against maybe the Nats or the Phillies. Kevin, they kind of got it. They probably had one like that. But 8 runs and you still lose the game. Come on, man. Let's get these bats going. I mean, I can't trust these pitches.
We'll set it for Braves and Marlins tonight. This is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Braves and Marlins tonight. We'll also have afternoon baseball for you tomorrow, 12:20 first pitch. So we'll be a little later joining you on 3 and Out. We'll join you after Braves and Marlins wrap up their series. So a little shorter version of 3 and Out on Thursday. We are looking ahead to talk with some great folks tomorrow on the show, BJ. So looking forward to that, talking some more college football.
I think Jalen Camp, former Georgia Tech wide receiver, going to join us, has been a very impressive athlete, a very good player as well, a guy that's going to get his chance at the next level. And Ben, he did, 30 bench press reps of 225, which would have been a record at the Combine.
Yeah, I mean, get a chance to really catch up with him tomorrow. Really, really impressive kid. I think most often the time we get so caught up, BJ and Kevin, in the first 2 rounds of the draft, we forget that the best players end up being the guys going rounds 4 through 7. Jalen Camp don't get a chance to go out there and show what he can do, and hopefully hear his name called in 2 weeks. Looking forward to the conversation tomorrow.
Absolutely. So we'll be with you after Braves baseball tomorrow afternoon as they wrap up their series with the Marlins. We'll have Charlie Morton for the Braves, Nick Neidert for the Marlins. Braves trying to get back in that win column. We'll have pregame coverage coming up for you in about 6 minutes or so here. This is 3 and Out all across Southern Pigskin Radio Network.